Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be going through 10 of the most brutal UFC fights in UFC history, and I'm going to be ranking each one of them. Enough said, let's get right into it. Starting at that number 10 spot, we got BJ Penn, Diego Sanchez. I believe this was BJ Penn's third title defense, right? Because or no, first. Yeah, I believe this was his third title defense. Diego Sanchez had cut down to lightweight. Had a pretty good career, was undefeated at lightweight, went up against BJ, and BJ just pieced him up. I think it was in like round 3 or 4. He just pieced him up the entire time, busted him up. BJ was known for having heavy hands, and you're going to be seeing BJ on this list again. Because, dude, prime BJ, dude, seriously, not a lot of people remember, but prime BJ was absolutely brutal. Busted dudes up really bad. Diego Sanchez was just another BJ Penn victim. Opened up a nasty cut over Diego Sanchez's eye, and yeah, the ref was forced to stop the fight. Number 9. Maybe? I think that's number 9. Okay, yeah. We got Joe Lozon. Joe Lozon. Jim Miller. Again, Jim Miller, it was kind of a back and forth war. Joe Lozon was known for having those back in the day. Pretty tough dude, man, but got split open a lot. Kenny Florian landed some elbows from bottom position on him, cut him open real bad. This fight was no different. Jim Miller busted him up, pouring blood on his face. Nasty cut. He was just, it was just a gnarly one, man. So typical Joe Lozon fight. It's a war, but, he gets brutally battered in that. Number 8. Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis. I don't know why I stumbled on that one. Anthony Pettis is a legend, but dude, this was like kind of later, more washed Anthony Pettis, and this was prime Tony Ferguson. Kind of similar to BJ, dude. Tony turned people's faces into a horror show, right? Some of the nastiest elbows in the game during his prime. Anthony Pettis, by the time the ref called this fight off, was just covered in blood. Tony was just like beating him down with elbows. Real brutal. Back and forth scrap though for a while. I think this got fight of the night. Real back and forth war until Tony just took over and started slicing him with elbows. Number 7. This is an old one, dude. So a lot of these guys, apparently, like if you were in the UFC 10, 15 years ago, they no longer care about you. Neither of these guys have a picture on the UFC website. So I had to go to Google to pull up these like circa 2005, 2006 pictures. To your left, you got Renato Babalu Sobral. Pretty tough dude. Decent UFC career. On the right, an absolute tomato can. David Heath. Babalu Sobral. You fast forward through this fight. David Heath took a truckload of damage. Babalu Sobral is on top of him, smashing him with elbows. I think eventually he got a rear naked choke. I'm not entirely sure. It was so damn long ago. But Heath Herring, horror show on the bottom. Busted open. Babalu is on top of him, continuing to smash him with elbows until I think Heath just eventually just gave up, dude, and was like, dude, I'm bleeding too much. I'm done. He doesn't have that crazy championship mentality, to persevere through all odds. So, brutal one there. Classic throwback fight. Number 6. Cain Velasquez, Bigfoot Silva. This was fresh off Cain getting knocked out, losing his belt to JDS. And, dude, this was the revenge tour. This was cold-blooded Cain in this fight, dude. Took Bigfoot Silva down early and absolutely butchered him on the ground. Busted him open. Silva's squirting blood out of his head. Keeps continuing. Cain takes him down again, continues smashing him with elbows. Ref calls it off, and Cain has the, coldest walk-off TKO win I have ever seen. Coldest walk-off TKO I've ever seen. Leaves Antonio Silva covered in his own blood and just has this look of pure just hatred on his face, dude. This was the revenge. This is what started the revenge tour for Cain. This was an absolute brutal fight to watch, especially over, a giant Bigfoot. So, I mean, not super tall, but just the frame, the face of that guy to take him down and just mangle him like that. Truly nasty. All right. I think top 5. 5th spot, we got, this one is, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. This is a recent one from earlier this year. Chris Duncan, Mateusz Rebecki. Dude, what an absolute war in the apex. Back and forth scrap. Both dudes, by the end of this, dude, it was like both dudes' faces were so fucking busted up. That, like, this was one of those fights that just makes you cringe. You're like, holy shit. Chris Duncan clearly won the fight. Busted up. Rumbetsky's eye was just completely closed. His face was swollen. Chris Duncan had like a cut on his head, cuts under both eyes. He was bleeding pretty good. Absolute war. Chris Duncan got the win, but damn, dude. It kind of like, that's one of those ones that's like, it's entertaining as hell when you're watching it, but like you sit there and kind of like have time to digest the aftermath, and it's like, fuck, dude. Both men took so much damage in that fight, but this is one of the good classic Apex wars right here. Number 4. Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald. Now, Rory McDonald's only, I don't know when he was last in UFC. It had to have been about 6 years ago. Pixelated images, dude. This is how the UFC treats you, dude. If you fucking, once you get old, they pixelate your ass. Pixelated Rory McDonald image, but I'm sure a lot of you have seen this fight. This is up there with like one of the most brutal fights of all time. One of the best UFC fights of all time. For the title, Robbie Lawler defending champ. Rory McDonald coming up. Absolute war, man. You know, this produced that iconic image. I think it was after round 2 or something, where both men are just covered in blood, staring each other down. John McCarthy's having to stand in between them, and they're just staring each other down. Towards the end of the fight, Robbie eventually, I can't remember what he hit him with. I think he hit him like right in the orbital, and Rory just was done. TKO win for Robbie Lawler. But the damage Robbie took, dude, the damage he took, oh my God, his lip was split in fucking half. And he was all sitting there, he's like, I'm going to keep coming and I'm going to knock you out. One of the hardest moments in UFC history. One of the most brutal fights too, man. Like, I kind of thought Rory fought kind of like a dipshit in this fight. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, going to war with Robbie Lawler, it's never good for your health, dude. Prime Robbie Lawler was different when it came to standing in the pocket and trading. You weren't beating him at that. Too much power, too much ability to do damage, and got the better of Rory again, man. Underrated fight, underrated win for Robbie Lawler. Number 3? I think this is number 3. Fuck, I can't remember where I'm at. Let me go back real quick. Okay, so we got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Okay, number 3. Again, Mateusz Rebecki, dude. He always finds himself in these wars. He's on here again. That Oralby fight, dude. Absolutely brutal. He beat the brakes off of Oralby, but Oralby held his own, dude. Absolute war, man. Back and forth. Rebecki didn't have as much. I mean, he had some pretty good cuts. Not as much as like the Chris Duncan fight, but compared to Oralby, dude, nothing. Oralby's half of his fucking face, it seems like, was swollen up like a damn balloon. Like, one of the best fights of 2025, bar none. And also one of the most brutal fights, not just of 2025, but like all time, man. All time. All right, second spot. BJ Penn, Joe Daddy Stevenson. This is like back in 08. Vacant title after Sean Shirk popped for anabolic steroids. This was the two guys who they set up to win the vacant lightweight belt. And dude, again, typical BJ fashion, bro. Got on top of Joe Daddy Stevenson, fucking brutalized him with elbows. Joe's head was just like pouring blood, dude. Pouring blood. He's a trooper, though. I think he fought on into like the 3rd round with that. You know, the cut man did a really good job kind of like slowing it down, but that thing was like a damn faucet, dude. The cut on his head, undoubtedly one of the worst cuts on the head in UFC history, just pouring blood. He's a trooper, but eventually he got choked out in the 3rd round. You know, what can he do? Blood going in both eyes, just that full, complete red forehead of Joe Daddy Stevenson. You gotta go watch some of these fights. I think the UFC has it on their website. I mean, not their website. I'm sorry. I think the UFC has it on YouTube. It's like the bloodiest fights. This, Number 2, there's one that's even worse than this. And this is one of the worst ones I've ever seen, dude. I felt so bad for Joe Daddy Stevenson because I was a Joe Daddy Stevenson fan. This was his time. He was on a big win streak. But, dude, Prime BJ Penn. He ran into Prime BJ Penn, who was just an absolute nightmare to deal with, both on the ground and on the feet as well. Now, moving on to the number 1 spot. One of the guys you might have heard of. The other guy, another tomato can. I can't remember. I think this was back in like maybe 09, 2010. And dude, the amount of blood on this fight was something out of a horror film, dude. Like, and the like if that fight wouldn't have gotten like finished by one of the fighters, that the ref, like, dude, this fight was so bad, like that would have been called off in the first round if it was this day and age. Seriously, that bad. Number 1 spot, we got Stefan Struve versus the tomato can, Dennis Stoinich. Stefan Struve got cut open, I think, with an elbow in round 1. And dude, I shit you not, he was like squirting blood. It was like out of the cut, it was like squirting blood and just like bubbling out. That's how bad it was. And Stefan Struve won the fight. He won the fight. He finished the fight before the ref had a chance to be like, dude, done. Or the doctors had a chance to be like, done. That's it. You're done. Like, Joe, it was so bad. Joe Rogan's like, my God, this needs to be stopped soon. Because Struve had his back. I think it was in like round 2. He had his back and it was just bubbling, pouring blood, squirting blood out of his forehead. And ended up getting was it a rear naked choke? Fuck, I can't remember. Again, really long ago. Like, you have to go back in the vault for this. But this is undoubtedly the worst, most bloody, brutal fight I've ever seen. Props to Stefan Struve for winning this. Yeah, this is going to be this was just a quick video. Wanted to go through and kind of highlight the most brutal fights in UFC history. Because, like, let's be honest, dude, like, oftentimes those are the most entertaining because we look forward to, guys battling through adversity. And especially guys who are pouring blood out of their head to get a victory is truly insane. Dude, I would be losing my shit if I was pouring as much blood as Stefan Struve was. But, he trooped through it and got the submission win. And that's all she wrote, man. Most brutal list. Like and subscribe. Let me know. Maybe I missed some fights. Let me know. Throw some suggestions in there. Throw some honorable mentions in there of some of the most brutal fights in UFC history. Till next time. See ya.